The first time Commander Vexlar of the Galactic Confederation saw a human up close, he nearly fled the diplomatic chamber in panic. The creature before him stood tall, too tall, with limbs that bent in ways that seemed both familiar and wrong. Its flat face housed two forward-facing eyes that tracked his movements with unsettling precision. But what truly disturbed him was its smile, a horrifying display of bone-white teeth that his ancestral brain recognized instantly as the mark of a predator. "Welcome to the Confederation," Vexlar managed, his voice steady despite the tremor in his secondary hearts. "We are pleased to finally make contact with your species." The human's smile widened. "The pleasure is ours, Commander. Earth has waited centuries for this moment." Behind Vexlar, his security detail shifted nervously. They had all studied the reports, watched the transmissions intercepted from this remote blue planet on the galactic fringe. None of it had prepared them for the reality of humans. 3 standard cycles earlier, a Confederation deep space probe had detected anomalous signals originating from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. The High Council had dispatched a reconnaissance fleet, expecting to find another pre-FTL civilization to quietly observe from a distance, standard protocol for species that hadn't yet achieved unified planetary governance or developed proper stellar travel. What they found instead had shaken the Confederation to its core. The humans had fragmented governance, perpetual conflicts, and wildly inefficient resource distribution. By all established models of societal development, they should have annihilated themselves centuries ago. Instead, they had thrived. They had developed technologies along paths the Confederation's scientists had never considered. They had spread across their planet's harshest environments, adapting themselves where other species would have adapted their surroundings. And they had done it all while remaining fundamentally divided. "Our analysts have studied your historical broadcasts," Vexlar said, gesturing to the holographic display between them. "We find certain aspects troubling." The human, Ambassador Chen, according to the translation matrix, nodded thoughtfully. "I imagine you would. Our history isn't pretty. We've made mistakes." "Not merely mistakes, Ambassador. Your species has a concerning pattern of behavior. You operate with a level of individual autonomy that borders on chaos. You embrace risk in ways that defy rational calculation." Chen's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes, those disturbing predator's eyes, sharpened slightly. "Different evolutionary paths, Commander. What seems chaotic to you feels like freedom to us." The diplomatic chamber fell silent as Vexlar considered his next words carefully. This meeting wasn't merely ceremonial. It would determine humanity's status within the galactic community. The High Council was divided on how to proceed. Some advocated for immediate containment protocols. The same measures applied to the only other predator species ever encountered by the Confederation, now safely confined to their home system. Others suggested a more measured approach, arguing that humanity's unique qualities could prove valuable if properly harnessed. Vexlar himself remained undecided. The data was contradictory. Humans displayed alarming aggression in their entertainment simulations and historical records, yet the actual incident rate of violence among their population had steadily decreased for generations. They maintained vast arsenals of weapons capable of planetary destruction, yet had refrained from using them again after their first devastating deployment. They competed fiercely for resources and status, yet routinely sacrificed personal advantage to aid complete strangers. "Tell me, Ambassador," Vexlar said, "how would you explain to a concerned galactic community why we should not fear your species?" Ambassador Chen considered this for several moments, then replied with a question of her own. "Commander, are you familiar with the concept of a keystone species?" "I am not. On Earth, certain species disproportionately affect their ecosystems relative to their population or biomass. Remove them, and the entire system collapses. Often these are predators: wolves, sharks, big cats." Chen gestured to the window, where the vast Confederation fleet hung in Earth's orbit. "Your civilization has achieved remarkable things. You've created stability, eliminated suffering across thousands of worlds. But from what we've observed so far, you've done it by eliminating anything that creates disturbance. Vexlar's sensory ridges flushed a deep purple. You consider chaos a virtue. I consider adaptability essential, Chen replied. The universe isn't kind, Commander. Entropy always wins in the end. Systems that cannot respond to unexpected challenges eventually fail. Humanity may seem messy to you, but our chaos, our diversity of thought, our willingness to take risks, our stubborn individuality, these qualities have helped us survive challenges that might have broken a more orderly species. The tension in the chamber had become palpable. Vexlar's security detail had subtly shifted positions, moving closer to their weapons. The human delegation remained still, apparently unconcerned. An interesting perspective, Vexlar said finally, but it does not address the fundamental concern. Your species possesses both the capability and the historical precedent for extreme violence. How can the Confederation be certain you won't eventually turn that violence outward? Chen's smile returned, smaller now, almost sad. You can't be certain. That's the point. Certainty is an illusion, Commander. The best any of us can do is make informed choices based on incomplete information. She leaned forward slightly. But consider this. We've had the ability to destroy ourselves for centuries. We've come close more than once. Yet here we stand. Vexlar wasn't satisfied. Self-restraint with regard to your own kind proves little about how you might treat others. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged. But I think it matters that when we finally looked up at the stars and asked ourselves what might be out there, our greatest fear wasn't that we would find monsters. She held Vexlar's gaze steadily. Our greatest fear was that we would find nothing at all. Before Vexlar could respond, his communication implant chimed with an urgent alert. The message that scrolled across his visual field made his 3 hearts stutter in sequence. Orbital defenses detecting massive energy buildup at coordinates 42.7 to 89.3. Unregistered vessels emerging from hyperspace. The Vextari have found us. For the first time in 700 cycles, the Confederation was under attack. And now Vexlar faced an impossible choice. Trust these unpredictable humans as allies, or face the Confederation's ancient enemy alone. Vexlar's compound eyes darted between the alert message and the human delegation. For a fleeting moment, he considered whether this was some elaborate human deception, a thought his ancestors would have embraced without question. But the energy signatures were unmistakable. The Vextari, the shadow that had haunted Confederation space for millennia, had returned. Commander, Ambassador Chen's voice cut through his panic. Is everything all right? The human's perception was unnervingly sharp. Vexlar had not vocalized his distress, had not changed his posture in any way detectable to most species. Yet somehow, she had sensed his alarm. We have a situation, he admitted, a decision that would have earned him censure from the High Council under normal circumstances. Sharing internal confederation matters with an unincorporated species violated at least 7 protocols. But these were not normal circumstances. Our sensors have detected unauthorized vessels entering your system, a species known to us as the Vextari. The human delegation exchanged glances. Their silent communication was another disturbing trait, subtle facial movements conveying complex meaning without words. Hostile? Asked Chen, her earlier philosophical demeanor instantly replaced by something harder, more focused. Yes, Vexlar replied simply. The Confederation has been at war with the Vextari for longer than your recorded history, though we have not encountered them in 700 cycles. They are, he struggled to find the appropriate translation, consumers. They harvest worlds. Chen's face darkened. Another of those micro-expressions Vexlar couldn't fully interpret, but its meaning seemed clear enough. The human was preparing for conflict. How much time do we have? She asked. Not enough, Vexlar admitted. My vessels are not primarily combat-oriented. We came here for diplomatic purposes, not warfare. Captain Rivera, the military attaché to the human delegation, leaned forward. What exactly are we dealing with? Numbers, capabilities, weaknesses. The directness of the question startled Vexlar. Most species, when confronted with news of the Vextari, responded with terror or denial. These humans immediately sought tactical information. It was simultaneously reassuring and alarming. 12 vessels of varying configurations, Vexlar said, projecting the sensor data onto the holographic display. The Vextari utilize organic-synthetic hybrid technology we don't fully understand. Their ships are partially grown rather than constructed. They have no fixed form and can adapt to countermeasures with disturbing speed. And their objective? Chen pressed. Resources, biological material, technology. They consume everything of value and move on. They are not conquerors, they are locusts. Rivera studied the tactical display with narrowed eyes. What's your standard response to these attacks? Evacuation where possible, containment where necessary. Vexlar hesitated before adding, the Confederation prioritizes the preservation of advanced civilizations and unique biological diversity, meaning you sacrifice less developed worlds. Chen translated, her voice flat. Vexlar's color-shifting skin betrayed his discomfort. The calculations are complex. Difficult choices must sometimes be made for the greater good. Not on our watch, Rivera said firmly. Earth doesn't abandon its own. And we're not about to let our first galactic neighbors get slaughtered either. The humans' declaration sent a ripple of surprise through Vexlar's staff. The concept was foreign to Confederation thinking. Strategic sacrifice was sometimes necessary. The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. It was simple mathematics. Your sentiment is admirable, Vexlar said carefully, but perhaps misguided. You have no conception of what we're facing. The Vextari have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. Then enlighten us, Chen said. Quickly. Vexlar made a gesture equivalent to a sigh. The Vextari emerged from the galactic core region 3,000 cycles ago. They appeared without warning. No developmental stages, no observable evolution of their technology. Simply, there, fully formed and immediately hostile. He manipulated the holographic display, showing historical footage of the Vextari attack on a now extinct civilization. The images were disturbing. Massive, asymmetrical vessels descending on populated areas, deploying smaller craft that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Structures being systematically dismantled, their components absorbed into the Vextari vessels. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They take what they want and destroy what remains. The Confederation fought them to a standstill during the first incursion, but at tremendous cost. We lost 17 member worlds before developing effective countermeasures. Which were? Rivera prompted. Sacrificial worlds, Vexlar admitted. We identified patterns in their consumption. They prioritize certain resources, certain types of technology. We provided targets that appealed to these priorities while evacuating more valuable systems. The human delegation's reaction was immediate and unified. Expressions of disgust and disbelief. You fed them entire planets to save your own, Chen said, her voice carefully controlled. We made necessary choices, Vexlar countered. The alternative was extinction. Before the argument could escalate, a junior officer burst into the chamber, body language signaling extreme distress. Commander, the Vextari fleet has changed course. They're ignoring our vessels entirely and heading directly toward the human homeworld. The implications hit Vexlar like a physical blow. The Vextari had always prioritized Confederation targets in the past. Their sudden interest in Earth could only mean one thing. They had detected something on this planet that they valued more highly than anything the Confederation vessels offered. How long until they reach Earth orbit? Vexlar asked. Approximately 40 standard units, the officer replied. Just under 2 Earth hours. Ambassador, Chen was already on her feet, communicating rapidly with her government through her primitive but effective communication device. Captain Rivera had moved to the tactical display, studying the approaching Vexteri fleet with professional intensity. "Commander," Chen said once she'd finished her call, "the United Earth Defense Council has approved emergency measures. We're activating our orbital defense grid and mobilizing our space-capable forces." Vexlar's sensory appendages twitched in surprise. "You have orbital defenses. Your technological assessment indicated only limited space warfare capability." For the first time since the meeting began, Chen smiled without showing her teeth. "Commander, there are some things we keep to ourselves until we know our neighbors better." Vexlar suddenly understood why humans frightened his analysts so deeply. It wasn't just their predatory nature or their chaotic governance. It was their capacity for deception, not merely from others, but from themselves. Their conflicting impulses toward both violence and self-sacrifice. Their ability to appear weak while harboring hidden strengths. As the diplomatic chamber transformed into an impromptu war room, Vexlar faced the grim realization that the Confederation's carefully calculated approach to the Vexteri threat might be rendered obsolete by human unpredictability. And even more disturbing was the growing suspicion in his three hearts that this might not be a bad thing. 90 minutes later, Earth's orbital space had transformed into a staging ground for the most unlikely alliance in galactic history. The sleek, crystalline ships of the Confederation fleet arranged themselves in a defensive formation alongside humanity's comparatively crude but numerous vessels, a hastily assembled collection of military satellites, armed space stations, and retrofitted transport ships. From the command deck of the Confederation flagship, Vexlar watched with a mixture of fascination and dread as Earth's surface came alive with activity. Launch facilities across the planet were disgorging vessels he hadn't known existed, small, maneuverable craft that his sensors struggled to track properly. Foe's ships weren't in any of our intelligence reports, he noted, turning to Ambassador Chen, who had joined him on the command deck along with Captain Rivera. "Orbital defense prototypes," Rivera explained without elaborating further. "Been in development for decades. Since we detected your probe 3 years ago. Actually," Chen added with that unnerving directness humans seem to favor, "we've been preparing for first contact. We just weren't sure if it would be friendly." Vexlar's innermost heart constricted. These humans had detected the Confederation's supposedly undetectable probe. And instead of panicking or descending into tribal conflicts as predicted by the xenosociology models, they had quietly begun preparing defenses. "The Vexteri will breach the outer system boundary in 5 minutes, announced his tactical officer. Their formation has changed. The holographic display updated, showing the approaching enemy fleet. Where before the 12 Vexteri vessels had been arranged in their standard harvesting configuration, a loose sphere designed to surround a target world, they had now formed a tight arrowhead formation, with the largest vessel at its point. "That's new," Vexlar said, mandibles clicking in concern. "In previous encounters, they've never altered their approach pattern." "They're adapting," Rivera observed, studying the formation. "That's a penetration formation. They're expecting resistance." A chill ran through Vexlar's segmented body. "They've never encountered Earth before. How could they anticipate your defenses?" "Maybe they're not adapting to us," Chen suggested quietly. "Maybe they're adapting to you, to what happened 700 cycles ago." The implication hung in the air. The Vexteri were evolving their tactics based on previous defeats. Learning. Planning. The thought was terrifying. "Incoming transmission," called out a communication officer. "From Earth Defense Command." The holographic display shifted to show a stern-faced human military commander. "Ambassador, Captain. Defense grid is online and targeting solutions have been distributed to all vessels. We've activated the Aegis protocol." Rivera stiffened visibly. "Sir, Aegis is untested in actual combat conditions. The power requirements alone." "Air necessary," the commander cut in. "This is what we built it for, Captain. Authorization has been granted at the highest level. Chen placed a hand on Rivera's arm, one of those casual physical contacts humans employed that still made Vexillar uncomfortable. "We knew this day might come," she said softly. Vexillar looked between them, suddenly aware he was witnessing something significant. "What is this Aegis protocol?" Neither human answered directly. Instead, Chen asked, "Commander Vexillar, what happens to a Vexteri vessel when it's destroyed?" "They're never truly destroyed," he replied. "Their organic components can regenerate as long as a viable nucleus remains. It's why conventional weapons are ineffective against them. The Confederation developed specialized containment fields to isolate and neutralize their vessels. We don't have that technology," Rivera said, "but we have something else." The command deck fell silent as the first wave of Vexteri scout vessels breached the outer defense perimeter. Sleek, writhing shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, they moved with unnatural speed and precision. Confederation vessels responded immediately, firing precise energy bursts designed to temporarily disrupt the Vexteri biomechanical systems. Several scouts faltered, their movements becoming erratic, but the main fleet continued its relentless advance. "They've improved their shielding," Vexillar noted grimly. "Our standard containment protocols are less effective." Earth's orbital platforms suddenly came alive, unleashing a barrage of missiles and energy weapons. The assault seemed primitive compared to Confederation technology, but the sheer volume was impressive. Space itself appeared to warp and distort as the human weapons impacted against the Vexteri shields. To Vexillar's amazement, several of the smaller Vexteri vessels actually recoiled from the assault, their organic hulls visibly scorched. "Impossible," whispered his tactical officer. "Their regenerative capabilities should neutralize such attacks instantly." Before anyone could respond, the massive Vexteri flagship at the center of their formation began to change. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, extruding enormous appendages that reached toward Earth like hungry fingers. "Energy spike," shouted a sensor officer. "The primary vessel is channeling massive power." Chen's communication device chimed. Her face paled as she read the message. "They've broken through the outer defense grid," she announced, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "They're targeting the continental defense centers: Washington, Beijing, Moscow, New Delhi. They know exactly where to hit us." Vexillar felt his three hearts synchronize in alarm, a physiological response his species developed for moments of extreme danger. "How could they know your defensive infrastructure?" "They've never encountered humans before today." Rivera and Chen exchanged a look that Vexillar couldn't interpret, but sensed was significant. "Unless," Chen said slowly, "they have." Rivera's hand moved to his sidearm, an instinctive gesture that didn't escape Vexillar's notice. "There's something you need to know, Commander," he said, his voice low. "In 1947, a vessel crashed in the New Mexico desert. Not Confederation design. Organic tech." Chen shot him a warning look, but Rivera continued. "For decades, we thought it was just debris. Dead tissue and strange metals that didn't match any known element. Until it started regenerating in 2018. "Impossible," Vexillar whispered, but the pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. "A Vexteri scout ship. We didn't know what it was," Chen admitted. "But when it started rebuilding itself, we contained it, studied it. That's how we developed the Aegis protocol." A distant explosion illuminated the command deck. Through the view screen, Vexillar watched as one of his cruisers disintegrated under Vexteri fire, its crystalline structure shattering into a million glittering fragments. "The Vexteri aren't just here for resources," Chen continued, her eyes fixed on the battle unfolding before them. "They've come to reclaim what they lost, what we took from them." The implications sent Vexillar's mind reeling. Humans had been experimenting with Vexteri technology for decades, the most dangerous biological material in known space, and these reckless primates had been poking at it like curious children. Your weapons, he realized aloud. They're effective against the Vexteri because they're derived from Vexteri technology. Fighting fire with fire, Rivera confirmed grimly. We learned their weaknesses. Before Vexlar could respond, his tactical officer called out, multiple spatial distortions detected. Energy signatures match Confederation emergency protocols. The holographic display blossomed with new contact signatures as massive vessels began emerging from hyperspace. Dozens of them, arranged in perfect battle formation. The sleek, predatory designs were unmistakable. Confederation dreadnoughts. The kind that weren't supposed to exist anymore after the peace treaties following the last Great War. You didn't come alone, Chen said, her expression hardening as she turned to Vexlar. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission. Vexlar's color-shifting skin betrayed his discomfort. The High Council took precautions. Earth represents a potential threat that you plan to neutralize if necessary, Rivera finished for him. Same playbook as 700 years ago. Sacrifice the problematic world to save the rest. The newly arrived Confederation fleet took up positions around Earth's orbit, their weapons powering up, but not targeting the Vexteri vessels. Instead, their targeting systems locked onto Earth's defense grid. Commander Vexlar, came a new voice over the communication system, deep and authoritative. This is High Executor Xanthor. The human containment protocol is now active. Stand down and prepare for evacuation. Chen's eyes met Vexlar's, betrayal and understanding mingling in her gaze. So now we face two enemies, she said quietly. Vexlar felt the weight of 700 cycles of Confederation dogma pressing down on him. The humans were dangerous, unpredictable. They had stolen and adapted Vexteri technology. By all established protocols, they should be contained or eliminated. And yet, no, he said, surprising himself as much as everyone on the command deck. Not two enemies. Three sides to a war that's gone on far too long. Alarms blared across the command deck as the Confederation dreadnoughts opened fire, not on Earth, but on the Vexteri fleet. Vexlar had transmitted emergency override codes, temporarily placing the entire battle group under his command. It was treason by Confederation standards, but he had made his choice. We have minutes before High Command realizes what I've done, he told Chen and Rivera. Your Aegis protocol, whatever it is, needs to deploy now. Chen was already relaying orders through her communication device. Defense Command is activating Aegis. They need 3 minutes to bring the system fully online. We don't have 3 minutes, Rivera said grimly, pointing to the tactical display where the massive Vexteri flagship had begun to unfold like a hideous metal flower, revealing a pulsing core of energy at its center. That's a planet killer, Vexlar whispered. They've never deployed such a weapon before. The battle around them intensified. Confederation ships fought with precision and coordination, their advanced weapons temporarily containing the smaller Vexteri vessels. Earth's defense platforms contributed withering fire, using their adapted Vexteri technology to surprising effect. But the massive flagship remained largely untouched, its energy weapon charging to full capacity. We need to hit the core directly, Rivera said, studying the readings. That's its vulnerable point. Impossible, Vexlar countered. Its defenses are too strong. Nothing could get close enough to. Something could, Chen interrupted, her gaze fixed on a small cylindrical device she pulled from her jacket pocket. The fragment we recovered in 1947. We've been containing it all these years, but we also learned to communicate with it. It wants to return to its kind. Vexlar's compound eyes widened in alarm. You're suggesting using the recovered Vexteri tissue as a Trojan horse. The risk is calculated, she finished for him. We've modified it. Added a quantum payload that will trigger a chain reaction through their organic network. A nearby explosion rocked the ship. The Confederation fleet was beginning to falter as the Vexteri adapted to their attack patterns. We need a delivery system, Rivera said. something fast enough to penetrate their defenses before they can react. Vexlar's inner eyelids flickered, the equivalent of a human's resigned sigh. My personal shuttle has experimental phase shift technology. It can briefly exist out of sync with normal spacetime, enough to get past their outer defenses. Who's going to pilot it? Rivera asked. The command deck fell silent. I will, Vexlar said finally. My species can survive brief exposure to vacuum. If I time the phase shift correctly, I can eject before impact. Chen handed him the cylindrical device, their hands briefly touching. Why are you doing this, Commander? Why betray your people for Orcs? Because the Confederation forgot what it means to evolve, he replied simply. We've been static for too long. Humanity reminds us of what we once were. Minutes later, Vexlar's shuttle streaked toward the Vexteri flagship, dodging energy blasts and debris. The phase shift drive whined as it charged, the ship flickering in and out of normal space. Phase shift in 3, 2, 1. Vexlar announced over the communication channel. The shuttle vanished from sensors, reappearing seconds later inside the Vexteri flagship's defensive perimeter. A blinding flash erupted as it struck the pulsing energy core, the modified Vexteri fragment unleashing its quantum payload. The flagship shuddered, its organic components beginning to collapse inward. The effect spread rapidly to the connected Vexteri vessels, their hulls contorting as the quantum cascade tore through their biological networks. On the command deck, Chen and Rivera watched in awe as the entire Vexteri fleet began to disintegrate. He did it, Rivera whispered, but there's no sign of his escape pod. Chen was about to respond when a new alert sounded. The remaining Confederation dreadnoughts had regained control of their systems and were once again targeting Earth's defenses. But before they could fire, every ship simultaneously powered down, their lights flickering out as their engines went dark. What just happened? Chen asked. The main view screen activated, showing not the face of the High Executor, but Vexlar, very much alive, his color-shifting skin glowing with triumph. I took a different shuttle, he explained, and I brought a gift for the Confederation fleet. The same shutdown code I used on the Vexteri. They'll be dormant for exactly 1 hour, enough time for us to talk about the future. 1 month later, Ambassador Chen stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, a temporary governing body consisting of representatives from Earth and the Confederation. The council chamber, hastily constructed in Earth's orbit, symbolized the fragile alliance that had emerged from the ashes of conflict. The last of the Vexteri biotech has been contained, she reported. Our scientists believe the quantum cascade permanently disrupted their hive intelligence. They won't be returning, at least not in any form we recognize. Vexlar, now bearing the title of Special Envoy rather than Commander, inclined his head in acknowledgement. His decision to side with humanity had cost him his military rank, but gained him something far more valuable: the chance to shape a new kind of relationship between their civilizations. The High Council has formally rescinded the containment protocol for Earth, he announced. Your world is now classified as a protected partner system, with autonomous governance rights. Generous of them, Rivera commented dryly from his position beside Chen. The captain had been promoted to Earth's military liaison to the Confederation, a role that suited his direct approach to interspecies diplomacy. They had little choice, Vexlar admitted. The shutdown codes I used against the battle fleet revealed a fundamental vulnerability in Confederation defensive systems, one that your Earth engineers have already proposed 3 different solutions for. That was the irony that still amused Chen. Humanity's chaotic approach to problem solving, the very trait that had most disturbed the Confederation, had proven to be their greatest asset. Where Confederation scientists sought perfect solutions through careful methodical research, humans threw everything at the wall to see what stuck. It was messy, inefficient, and surprisingly effective. There's still the matter of the technology exchange, Chen said, bringing the discussion back to the main agenda. My government insists on full disclosure regarding the Vexteri incursions throughout Confederation history. We need to understand what we're dealing with. A ripple of discomfort passed through the Confederation representatives. 700 cycles of carefully guarded secrets were not easily shared. The data is being prepared, Vexlar assured her. But I must emphasize that some of our historical encounters with the Vexteri remain problematic. The decisions made by previous Confederation leaders were products of their time. We're not looking to assign blame, Chen replied. We just need to learn from history. All of it. The good and the bad. After the meeting concluded, Chen found Vexlar gazing out at Earth through the station's observation deck. The blue-green planet hung serenely against the backdrop of space, showing no visible scars from the battle that had nearly destroyed it. They're afraid of us, aren't they? She asked, joining him at the viewport. Not just the Confederation leadership, but the average citizens. They're afraid of what humanity represents. Vexlar's color-shifting skin rippled thoughtfully. Fear and fascination are often two sides of the same coin, Ambassador. Your species represents chaos to a civilization built on order, unpredictability to a society that values certainty. But you also represent innovation, adaptation, hope. Hope can be terrifying, Chen acknowledged. Indeed, but necessary. Vexlar turned to face her. The Confederation feared the Vexteri because they were utterly alien, incomprehensible. We fear humans because you are a mirror, showing us what we once were and what we might become again. Chen smiled. Sounds like the beginning of a beautiful friendship, or a spectacular disaster, Vexlar countered, his tone lightening. With humans involved, one can never be entirely certain which. Together, they watched as shuttles moved between Earth and the station, carrying diplomats, scientists, and traders, the first tentative connections of two civilizations learning to coexist. Below them, humanity continued its chaotic, unpredictable existence, blissfully unaware that their very nature had saved them. That in a universe of order and certainty, their greatest strength was their beautiful unpredictability. And that was exactly why aliens feared Earth.